The Mariners are now linked to two new infielders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the weekly episode of the Seattle Baseline Podcast. My name is Julian Smith, and I'm with Alex Hong. Alex, before we start today, we have some pretty big news that we have to share. The Seattle Baseline Podcast has officially hit its first benchmark. The 100 subscriber mark has been hit. Thank you, everyone who have been watching and supporting our channel for so far less than a year. We're going to be more than a year in like 2 months, and we're going to be 10 years in the next 9 years. So that's going to be super awesome. And yeah, thanks, Alex, and everything. Yeah, it's been super awesome. The channel growth has been fun to watch, and just simply talking about the Mariners has been a really fun experience. And yeah, I'm excited to keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that we hit that milestone. I mean, I haven't even been like keeping track of the subscriber count until you like told me, so that actually kind of caught me by surprise, but it's pretty cool to hear about that.
Yeah. So as we hit 100 subscribers, MLB has been giving us a little bit more awesome rumors to talk about. First of all, Munetaka Murakami signed a contract with the White Sox. I know he's been linked a little bit to the Mariners, maybe not so much recently, but I know he was at the start of the offseason. So I think that's a pretty good contract for Murakami. And I think after 2 years with the White Sox, I think he's going to develop pretty decently. So I'm excited for him. And we talked about Brendan Donovan last week because Jorge Polanco signed with the Mets. Now we're going to talk about another guy that was on the Mariners roster in 2025, and that's Eugenio Suarez. So Eugenio Suarez, Alex, like, what's your overall impression of like a player like Eugenio Suarez? Because like the Mariners know him, Mariners fans know him, you know him, I know him, and yeah. So like, what's your overall opinion on him?
Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing about Suarez throughout the offseason. We talked about him a little bit earlier and very early on in the offseason, and my stance on him hasn't really changed, right? He's a good clubhouse guy, obviously, and he's a pretty good player as well. There's a lot of pros and cons. So if we look at the pros, right, at least for the Mariners signing him, he's played here before, right? And the continuity is nice. We know what we're gonna get, right, out of Suarez. He's good vibes, right? He has a lot of power. I mean, he hit like what, 49 home runs last year, right? Ridiculous amount, crazy for his age. And yeah, he has some stuff that are good, but there's a lot of problems with him. Besides his age, cost, it might be up there, right? It might be a little more than what we might be thinking, but I mean, who knows, right? Who knows with the money thing? We thought Murakami was going to get more than 17 million a year. He did not, right? He got 17 million a year. So, maybe the market isn't doing too great for him, but the problems are very lackluster on defense, can kind of only hit home runs, and really struggles at T-Mobile Park. And the struggling at T-Mobile Park is not something that can really change. I mean, we've had years of, including last year, of Eugenio Suarez, and he never hit very well at T-Mobile Park. See, it's like one thing if he, maybe he can fix one thing that's like a problem on his defense, or maybe there's one thing he can adjust in his swing, but the T-Mobile Park aspect is a little difficult for me to get over.
Yeah. So when he first got traded to the Diamondbacks, I remember he hit a bunch of balls on the warning track, and they were, if you were at Arizona, those are home runs, and so he's used to the Arizona feel, and then he hit those barely not home run warning track shots. I think that was the moment where Eugenio Suarez went, okay, I need to crank it up a little bit more, and I need to hit it just slightly 10 feet further, 20 feet further to get it over that fence at T-Mobile Park. And I think clearly it messed him up. I think that that's the point where Eugenio Suarez looks at his season and goes, yeah, T-Mobile Park derailed my season. And unlike being on the Diamondbacks where you barely ever have to play T-Mobile Park, maybe you play it 3 times in your whole season, 3 days in a series. Now you have to play it every day. this is your main stadium. You need to be good at T-Mobile Park if you want to play for the Seattle Mariners, basically. Because sure, you can be good at other stadiums. You can be one of those guys that contributes at the away stadiums, but you're basically immobilized for half of the season if you decide that you want to move forward with someone who clearly doesn't match your stadium in the way that he hits. And so that's where I think Eugenio Suarez at T-Mobile Park and with the Mariners runs into a little bit of an issue. But
Uh-huh.
my my reason for what I think the Mariners' reason would be for signing Eugenio Suarez is that he is a free agent and you don't have to give up any prospects. You can go trade for another person, another player that is earning significantly less. And because you can sign or not sign, you can trade for these rookie contracts who are not getting paid very much, and they're still going to be really good for your team. Brendan Donovan was one of them. We talked about in last episode. So if the Mariners want to sign Eugenio Suarez and then turn to Brendan Donovan, you're giving up the prospects for Brendan Donovan, but then you still get Eugenio Suarez, the free agent, without giving up the extra prospects that you would for another trade. So that's where I think the Mariners are looking with Eugenio Suarez.
Mhm.
His contract, his projected contract cost is slightly lower than what the Mariners if they pay the if they pay Eugenio Suarez $20 million, they have no other moves. But if they pay Eugenio Suarez 15, they have more moves for trades budget wise. And so that's what I think the Mariners are looking for with Eugenio Suarez. If we can sign him for a little bit cheaper than something that would immobilize us, like completely stop us from making any more moves, that would be a pretty decent situation.
I mean, let me bring on the T-Mobile point once again. Okay. Let me read you his stats. Okay. At T-Mobile Park in 2025, he batted 111, a 192 on base, a 287 slugging for a total of 479 OPS. And this is 108 plate appearances. They're not like five plate appearances. This is 108. So he was awful. I mean, he's
Mhm.
unplayable at T-Mobile Park. I think that in itself is the number one reason why we should not re-sign Eugenio Suarez, in my personal opinion. This has been a problem for the years he played here as well, and it's just his play style. I mean, it's nothing against him as a player, it's just the way he plays. I mean, this is just what happens. When he got traded to the Diamondbacks, he was way better, right? And think about this, his OPS, okay, at T-Mobile Park was 479, right? But his OPS for the entire Mariners, right, 2025 season was around almost 700. That means he's a normal player. He's a pretty good player outside of T-Mobile, but when you bring in T-Mobile, it's like over here. That's why his average was like you average it out, it's like just, a regular player, right? He played basically as well as he did on the Diamondbacks last year. So I'm not too much concerned about his age per se. I'm just concerned about the ability to play at home. And when half of our games are at home, it just cannot be like this. So I think out of all reasons, that's the reason why we should not bring back Suarez.
Especially because he's a power hitter that can't leverage his power at T-Mobile. Like that's what he is. Julio Rodriguez can hit the ball so far that the stadium really doesn't matter for him. Cal
Yeah.
Raleigh can hit the ball so far, like literally blasts the ball so far that you can be at any stadium. It doesn't matter. With Eugenio Suarez, it does. And I think there are a few players in the Major League Baseball, um, in Major League Baseball that have that same problem as Suarez, and Suarez is one of them. And I think that's where the Mariners' fit for Suarez is definitely low. But moving on, I think I when we think about the fit for T-Mobile Park, this second player that we're going to talk about now is a clear fit, and that's Nico Hoerner. Nico Hoerner is a player that fits T-Mobile Park the way that he plays. He doesn't slug very much, even at Wrigley Field. He he hits a lot of singles, bats 290 and gets on base at 350. So this is a player that is your leadoff guy. He will get on base, he will steal bases for you. But because his slugging numbers are low, his OPS will not be high. He's I think he's very similar to a second base Stephen Kwan. And earlier in the offseason, we were talking about Stephen Kwan as this guy that can be at the start of your lineup and play that role, that true leadoff role. I think that Nico Horner with second base, he does that exact same thing and is compatible with the Mariners, plays that position that the Mariners need him to play. And so this is if you're a Mariners fan looking at Stephen Kwan and going, this is a guy that would fit the Mariners because he's a leadoff guy. I think Nico Horner is the guy for you because I think that Nico Horner is the Stephen Kwan that plays the position that you want him to play.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, he's also a really, really good defender, right? Gold Glove, um, Gold Glove defender. That would be better than like any of the Mariners' current like infielders, right? We had talked about this a little earlier, like in last episode, I think, about like the defensive struggles, and if we keep bringing in more problems on defense, it's going to be a point to where like having one bad defender on the infield isn't that much of a problem, but when everyone is bad, we can see and we saw it last year. There would be some problems, right? And it doesn't help your pitching staff either. But yeah, Nico Horner, he's a player I like actually, and he brought a lot of value to the Cubs last year. So and I definitely think he would bring a lot of value to the Mariners. And when you kept talking about the park situation, he's not the type of guy who would run into big problems, right? And playing at T-Mobile. But my concern is I just don't understand. I've seen this Nico Horner like trade like talks possibly like on other like sites and like channels, but I just don't understand why the Cubs would trade Nico Horner. By the way, just for his contract details, he's going to be a rental. He has 1 year left on his contract.
Yeah. So Nico Horner is going to be a rental bat or a rental second baseman. And basically the idea is what if the Cubs, after losing Kyle Tucker, end up not being as good as they expect to be, the playoff team that they are. And with Nico Horner, it seems like their budget restriction is too much to go out and sign him. And so why not trade him to another team for a more what's it called? With for to a more long-term person, a more long-term
Like a
prospect.
prospect, yeah.
Yeah, like a Cole Young, for example. Like why wouldn't you go out there and want to trade someone like Nico Horner for a Cole Young who can be in the club for a lot longer and it gives the Mariners an opportunity to go win a World Series with a premium second baseman. So that's the idea. And if you go to the trade deadline with Nico Horner and you decide to trade him there, the level of prospects that you'll get back, the level of trade value that Nico Horner has with 2 months left on his contract is significantly less than 1 year. And so that's the idea with Nico Horner.
Mhm.
I have to agree with you on this one. I don't think the Cubs would likely trade him. I think that the Cubs have the pieces necessary to go out and compete for a World Series. And why would they give up their premium second baseman? That makes a lot of sense. But then again, what would the Mariners give up for Nico Horner to for the Cubs to look at the Mariners and say, "Oh, that's a good enough deal. We'll trade for him." Specifically, he is a rental second baseman, premium but rental. So that's the question that's going around, I think.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about it from the Cubs' perspective, right? The benefit might be a more long-term player, right? Maybe they don't want to pay him because they're trying to save up money for Pete Crow Armstrong. There could be a lot of different reasons, right? Maybe they just want a longer-term player, right? The Mariners would be able to give up like these longer-term players, right? Cole Young, for example, is your perfect example, right? He would be Yeah, begs the question, would you rather have Nico Horner for a year? Let's say the Cubs know they're not going to re-sign him, right? Or would you have Cole Young for like 6 years, right? And with the
Mhm.
potential for him to be as good or better possibly than Nico Horner, right? We never know. We also know Cole Young could just be bad. I mean, we don't know about that, right? So it's just like kind of like throwing the dart there. But if you're a team trying to compete, right? I mean, it like the Cubs are clearly not trying to rebuild, right? If they were trying to
No,
rebuild, we would have seen some moves by now, right? But they're not, right? And they did make the playoffs last year. They were a very good team last year. Now, without Kyle Tucker, they're probably not going to be as good, but it's not like that team is so bad to where it's going to lose a lot of games.
no,
I just don't see how you have this win. I mean, like maybe last year was the window, and this year they need to do like some rebuilding, but they could still compete this year. So I actually just don't think they should trade him at all. So I see this idea thrown around there. And also, one thing I also see is that I feel like teams are a lot less hesitant to admit their team is bad. Like
hmm
the general manager, right? They're not willing to say, "Oh yeah, this team, I can't do anything with this team. We got to get rid of everyone." It also just looks bad, right? Like if you have a team who just made the playoffs, who did do really well last year, you don't just blow it up the next year. Okay, that's just gonna be very confusing to your fan base. Your fan base is not gonna like that. Okay,
no,
so throughout all of this, right now, Nico Horner is not like Aaron Judge, right? If the Yankees decide to trade away Aaron Judge, the entire New York City is gonna like lose their minds, right? There's not like a player like that. But in my opinion, I mean, they definitely could. Maybe they really just care about their future, but I don't think it's the best move for the
Mhm.
Cubs perspective. But let's say, we could talk about how the Cubs probably don't want to trade him, but let's just say in the hypothetical, they do want to trade him for whatever the reason is. I actually think Nico Horner would be a good fit for the Mariners.
Yeah, and if you compare him to like that same level of player, I think Stephen Kwan is a perfect comp. We don't need left fielders, but we want that type of player. And so when I look at Nico Horner, it's like, okay, great. With the Guardians, I think like they're more possible to trade Quan because I mean they're in a little bit more of a rebuild stage than the Cubs are. But
Hmm.
with if you could get Nico Horner, he is a much better option for you with the roster fit than Stephen Kwan is. And so that's the point I think where if the Mariners could go out and get him, obviously you don't want to pay Colt Emerson for the guy, but if you trade away Cole Young, you still have Colt Emerson in your back pocket for the next season, and you can go out and trade for a Brendan Donovan for the next 2 years with Nico Horner on your roster and Colt Emerson sitting on the bench or in AAA. I think I assume AAA is a much better option for him at that point, but I think that you have so many options that you can go and do with Nico Horner, and it makes your team significantly better than it was last year. So that's where I stand on this. I think for from just to make it simple, I like Nico Horner. I don't know if the Cubs are going to trade him, but if they do, go get him.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. In its entirety, right? And yeah, like I said, you're entirely correct. Like the Cubs had 92 wins. They only didn't win the division because the Brewers were that good, right? So this is a team with a lot of potential. And for the Mariners side of things, right? Let's say you trade for Horner, right? He's gone next year. Well, Emerson will be up and ready to completely take over. Okay. So through that, you can have like maybe if you have Donovan, if you decide to trade for Donovan as well, for example, then okay, you're running a situation where you have Donovan and Horner for 2025. You call up Emerson at some point whenever he's ready to play not you don't have him play like a excruciatingly difficult like amount of like playing time to where it might be harder for him to develop, right? And then the next year when Horner's gone, you have Emerson playing full time. So I could see a path like that for definitely working. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely an option to consider. I'm not sure exactly if it's the most likely, but it's definitely a feasible option.
and same with the well, I think opposite with the Suarez one. You he's not a very good fit for T-Mobile Park, but at the same time, he is a good player. And if you could figure out a way to get him to get that extra 10 feet per swing without messing up his whole contact swing, then that's great. So I think the Mariners have a lot of good options here that are maybe not the most likely, but they are still there. And I think I like the options that are presented to the Mariners, and I'd love to know what you guys think. Like, what do you who do you guys think the Mariners should trade for, and who do you think is the most feasible option for the Mariners? And yeah, I think Mariners are looking pretty good so far. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our beautiful faces on YouTube. Check out our Instagram. And as always, go Mariners.
Go Mariners.